So this is kind of overall linebacker and defensive line talk here. I'm just talking about run defense. It's my biggest concern going into next year. I think it could potentially be the weakness of the team. So bold statement. That's what I'm saying. I think run defense could be the weakness of this team next year. A couple of reasons. So I didn't watch the spring game till Monday, and I rewatched it Tuesday. I'm recording this Tuesday night. Got my coffee ready. This is going to be an old school Drew Tamu type of video where I just kind of sit down and talk to you guys for about 30 minutes or so. So it's going to be a little bit of a longer video, a little bit more of a rambling, just face-to-face chat kind of video. Talk about the state of the team. Talk about where we're at. I guess I got to drop some caveats, stuff that you guys already know, but I feel like I have to say it. Spring game is not a place where you can draw conclusions, right? It's not a place where you can make these big, sweeping statements about the team. Now, what you can do is take it for information. It's a snapshot. It's a glimpse. We've been working with a new coaching staff. New players have entered the team. Obviously, you guys know there's a lot of new around. So I think there was more than a fair share of nuggets to take away from this game, maybe more so than a typical spring game. They say they keep spring games vanilla. That's definitely true. But the vanilla was new. They're running their very basic offense, basic defensive packages, and we're just kind of seeing where these coaches are coming from with this new philosophy, new scheme, and the new players. So you got your Scortons, you got your Cassius Howells, you got your Cyrus Allens, you have your Armaj Reed Adams, you have all these new players to digest as well. Now, I think we can probably take more from the guys that we've been watching for the past couple of years, like a Le'Veon Moss or Ruben Owens. Like, we could probably take more because we have more context there. We've seen them develop. We've seen where they're coming from. We have hopes for them already. We have preconceived notions about these guys as opposed to some of these other portal guys. So I think perhaps I'll speak more strongly on some of the guys that have been around for a while and more cautiously about the new guys. But let's get into it. I have positives. I have negatives. You guys watched the game. I mean, you're probably commenting your thoughts on the game. Uneven play across the field, right? That's just the nature of the game when you have captains that pick the teams. You had Trey Zune pick the maroon team. You had Torin York pick the white team. I think Trey Zune had a little bit more of a strategy going into it. I think Zune was correct in picking the strong receivers and picking some stronger offensive linemen maybe. I think the maroon team had quite the advantage, and they won the game. Not that that really matters, but yeah, uneven play. You had maybe some starter-level players on the field at the same time as some third-stringers or even walk-ons at times. So where should we start? Let's start with some positives. I'm a positive guy. Let's start with Noah Thomas. I think that this offense, Colin Klein's new offense, really wants Noah Thomas to be that wide receiver one. And I say that for several reasons. First of all, we know the route running potential. We know what he can do with the ball in the air. He's always been kind of crafty with the ball in the air, using his body to shield, kind of playing some hand games, just grabbing contested balls. That's what Noah Thomas does. But they also got him involved in RPOs and in runs and in the short game and scheming him open in that way. So to me, that tells me that they see him as more than just that jump ball red zone threat. They see him as a wide receiver one. And I think it makes sense. I think of all the receivers we saw in this game, he was the one that they targeted in that capacity by far the most. So we have a wide receiver one, and it's Noah Thomas. He has to stay healthy. That's been the thing with Noah. What really stood out to me about Noah, obviously, the touchdown was awesome. The two touchdowns were awesome. The one on the double China was amazing, where the quarterback snaps the ball. You have Noah Thomas as your wide receiver 3. He runs that flag route to the corner, and then you have the two outside receivers running those in routes. So you have your man beater and your zone beater all within one view of the quarterback. I think it's just a really efficient play to run in the red zone with a guy like Noah Thomas, where if the safety's lined up kind of inside of him and it's man coverage, you know he's going to have that route there, and he has the body and the tools to catch that touchdown, which he did in the game, which was awesome. But they also used him in, I believe, kind of an option RPO play, got him open on a touchdown on the left side of the field. You remember both plays. But they also handed the ball off to him, got him the ball in space, and asked him to go run with the ball. So I forgot about this underrated aspect about Noah Thomas, and I'm starting with a rant about Noah Thomas. Why the hell not? This is how I'm starting the video. We're buckled in. This is a long video. I'm just talking. I have my dinosaur coffee, so we're just talking. I forgot that Noah Thomas actually was sneaky good with the ball in his hand early last season. I remember him fighting, juking, pushing guys around for extra yardage until he got hurt. And that kind of went away. He kind of exclusively became that jump ball threat kind of guy. But when he was healthy, he had that. And I remember talking about that in several videos. I forgot about that, but clearly the coaching staff saw that. So I'm just gloating about one player right now. It's not a very effective use of our time. But I think this offense really needs Noah Thomas to be healthy and to be there, because I think he's going to be one of the focal points of this team. So just more urgency to the health of Noah Thomas. He got through spring healthy. Elko said that he got healthier throughout the duration of spring. Maybe that's gaining more confidence in his lingering injuries. Maybe that's just getting back into playing shape, and now he gets to go into summer healthy. That's very exciting for Noah. I thought Jade and Moose were fine. It's hard to get a full read on just the route running when they're not involved in the play because of the angles of ESPN. It's very line of scrimmage focused, so it's hard to say. They weren't heavily involved. I think Jade only had 1 or 2 receptions. I don't know if Moose even had a reception he was targeted. Quarterback play was kind of uneven. Start with Connor. And, I'm not going to spend too much time on Connor, even though he's such a focal point, obviously, quarterback of the team. But he's injured, and the team he was on was only featuring the backup receivers, so he didn't have any of the starting trio of receivers. He didn't have Moose, Noah, or Jade. He had Tease, he had Cyrus Allen, and I think he had walk-ons beyond that, I believe. And I think that showed, but I think his lack of confidence in himself also was kind of lingering there. I think the injury, it's just lingering effects from the injury, the foot injury. I remember on the boot when he was running right, when he had, I think, Cyrus Allen open right in front of him, instead of making that play, he threw the ball in the dirt. To me, that wasn't very Connor Wigman. Some of the bubbles were kind of inaccurate. Some of his timing was a little bit off, although he did have a couple of really nice strikes. The one over the middle, I think, to Cyrus Allen, where it was kind of over the linebacker and the safety, and he kind of had just perfect timing on the ball, perfect zip on the ball. He threw the ball before the receiver was open. It was like an NFL-level pass. I don't want to say I'm worried about his health, because he has a lot of time to get healthy right now. But if that's the Connor we get in week 1, I would be worried. So here's to a really good summer for Connor Wigman, a good summer of rehab, a good summer of getting back into shape. He didn't look like he was in pristine shape, to be understood, coming off of that injury. So, yeah, it was not a great game from Connor Wigman, and I don't know if we should necessarily be surprised by that. But once again, just like Noah, he gets to go into summer relatively healthy, although rehabbing and coming back from that existing injury, nothing new that we know of. So he has that opportunity there. Hopefully, he can make some progress. I thought Marcel Reed showed some really promising tools, guys. Did you see it too? Just his ability to pass from several angles and just how quick he is, how fast he is, and how long he is. I don't think we got as many looks as we would have hoped from any one quarterback. I think he showed the most promise and flair between him and Henderson. I think Henderson had some rough moments deciding when to tuck and run, but they all made plays. Obviously, we're going to be looking at Connor when we're talking about 2024, though. So I guess I'll end my quarterback spiel there. Uneven play across the board, but, Reed has a chance to be that guy in 2 years, especially if Connor has the year that we hope he can have next year. And I've said this many times, and I suppose I should have thrown this caveat out earlier in the video, but this entire offseason kind of has a cloud over it. Is it a cloud, or is it just a real reality that you open the season with probably a top 10 matchup versus Notre Dame, and then you travel to the Swamp in week 3? So we're talking about a team that needs to be ready. So that's always there. And when you're talking about Connor, that's like the biggest swing piece on the team, right? If Connor is like that borderline Heisman fringe talks kind of player that we know he possibly can be, this team could win 9-10 games. I think he's that good. But if he has lingering effects, you're talking about the risk of dropping early games and maybe having to build into this thing. So with that, I'll transition into the offensive line, which everybody wants to hear about. I guess I'm starting offense then defense. I'm just going with this. I'm just going. There's just so much to talk about, so I'm just taking this where the language kind of takes me. But offensive line, very uneven. I'm using the word uneven a lot because you'll have walk-ons and starter-level players playing at the same time, so just uneven across the board. We saw some really bad offensive line play. We saw some really bad plays from a lot of different players. We also saw some good plays from a lot of players, and I really like what Colin Klein does for this offensive line. He is very, very much focused on power running and pin and pull runs, which is basically getting a bunch of offensive linemen pulling to specific areas to get the running backs lanes to run through. They also mix in some zone, which is where all the offensive line kind of block on the same path in the same direction, no pullers. But we're going to be seeing a lot of pulling offensive linemen, and for the most part, I thought most of the offensive linemen looked good when they were pulling. I thought they looked athletic. I thought they looked decisive in their pulls, and you could tell that they had drilled that a lot in camp. So I really liked what they looked like there. There were some struggles in the pass pro, specifically with Nick Scorton and Shamar Stewart. Those guys, we'll talk about them. We'll talk about them in a second. But, I mean, Crownover got it. Fothery got it. Although I think Fothery held his own for a long time before he finally got it. He got the big spin move by Scorton on him for the sack. Yeah, Scorton has that in his bag, and he's going to use the hell out of it. But everyone was getting beat. Everyone was getting beat, but a lot of guys had good moments. You had the long runs by Owens. You had two really good long runs. The first one to start the game out, or I think on the first drive of the game, that was a TJ Shanahan lead block, the center pulling, and that was like a 25-yard gain. I thought Shanahan looked really good, guys. I was impressed with Shanahan as the backup center. He moved to center this camp, and I thought he looked solid. I would make kind of a bold statement here to say that Shanahan has a chance to crack the rotation. Typically with the offensive line, minimal rotation there. It's not the most tiring position, but you typically have one or two spell guys, one bigger guy, one inside guy. I think Shanahan has a chance to crack that rotation, but we'll have to see how things progress, especially with the recent news, if you haven't heard by now, of Bryce Foster not being on the team anymore. So that really opens things up for Shanahan, and he looked promising, which is good given the recent events. I thought Basantis and Reed Armage Adams, the transfer out of Kansas, had the most consistent games on the offensive line. I thought they had just the most consistent play. Least whiffs, least off-balance plays, least times getting beat. I thought those two guys played the best. I thought Trey Zune had a really tough assignment with Scorton. He got beat a lot. I have faith in Trey Zune. He's shown for 2 years that he's a solid player. Now, to what level he will become, I don't know, but I know he can be a reliable SEC left tackle. So, not the cleanest game from Zune, I don't think, but it's weird when you have guys moving around so much in the offensive line. So, here's the thing with the O-line. You got to find 5 guys, right? And we didn't see those 5 together in this spring game. We didn't see the cohesive group. And we heard from Elko in one of his pressers that they're not really preaching chemistry or cohesion or finding the right 5. They're breaking it down, working fundamentals, building from the ground up, which is something you probably needed to do after struggling so much the last 2 years, players regressing and whatnot. You still have Dewberry that needs to get back out there. I don't think Aggie was out there, although Aggie hasn't played much recently. I have a solid level of confidence based on who I know is on the team, based on what we're hearing, based on the spring game, that they're going to field an improved 5. Now, that's not saying much, because how bad has this O-line been? Not good. Players regressing, players standing straight up, players getting lost, a lot of rough play. But I do like what I saw in those pulling plays and in some instances pass pro. It's really hard to get a look when they're going up against Nick Scorton and they don't have their appropriate teammates next to them. But it's not a bold statement to predict that it'll be better than last year. Now, how good can it be? Can they field a 5 that you feel good about game in, game out, to where it's at least not a liability, not necessarily a strength? I'm not talking 2020 Maroon Goons here. at least where it's not a liability. I think that's very much on the table, if not likely. But to what level? That's my big question. Now, right now, if I were to list my starting five, and I don't know where I put Dewberry because he wasn't there, so maybe I'll leave him out. Let's just see where I go with this. I'm gonna do it on the fly. This video is not really well constructed or planned. I'm just kind of riffing here because there's just so much. So left tackle Zune, left guard. They moved Basantis there, maybe because Dewberry has been out for camp. Whatever. Basantis looked good. Center, you got to go with Naboo. I thought Naboo had an up and down game, but we've seen enough from Naboo to where I think you have to keep relying on that development. Let him keep playing. Let him get more accustomed to the new system. Naboo at the center. Right guard, I guess you go Dewberry there. Or Reed Armaj Adams. I thought Reed had a great game, so Reed and Dewberry might have to battle for that thing. So maybe you go Reed Adams. And then I think I'm rolling the dice with Fothery, even though Crownover at this point is coming off the more, I guess, recent season of actually playing. But we've seen what Fothery could be. I thought he looked pretty good in the game. I didn't see a lot of... I imagine with him it would be strength issues, balance issues, endurance issues, because the whole thing with him last year was he couldn't get over that injury, and it held him back. Remember, he got injured this time last year. He got injured the week of the spring game last year. He got healthy, like cleared for on-field activity during fall camp last year, and then he just never got back into game shape. I would try Fothery, but of course you'd have to see how he looks in camp. You have two options there. Crownover has proven to be inconsistent, but I've been saying, and many of you have thought, many people have said, Crownover's a long-term project. I think Fothery should be the best case scenario there. But then you have three quality backups. You have either Crownover or Fothery. I'm saying Crownover's a backup. Then you have either Dewberry or Reed Armaj Adams. And then maybe TJ Shanahan, a guy that I thought looked really good in spring. So how does it come together? How good can it be? How quickly can they equip this new look offense, the new scheme? I thought they looked fine scheme-wise. It was just every now and then a whiffed play. Every now and then one guy would mess up, and that's just how it goes with the offensive line. That's just how it goes. One guy messes up, the play falls apart, the leverages change, the angles change, and the play blows up. So everybody has to be in lockstep. Can they accomplish that? I feel good about finding the five, but how good can that five be, and how quickly can they be good? Long rant about the offensive line is done. Tight ends. You're missing Donovan Green. That's a major factor, but to what level of health is he come fall camp? I don't know. I still think he's our best option. I was not blown away by any specific tight end in camp, although Theo Mellon Orstrom he looked pretty good running his routes. He was open at times. Quarterbacks did not find him at times. I think he caught one play and made a guy miss an open space, which was nice. It was good to see him get out there. Struggle blocking defensive ends. And those are some tough defensive ends to go against. I don't remember which team he was on, but he struggled blocking. So I don't know how much you can rely on him in the blocking game. You're looking at a potential tight end too, a guy that's going to be relied on to block a lot, a guy that's going to be heavily involved in RPOs. I think there's a chance Theo becomes ready to be that guy. Is he there yet? I don't know. Jaden Platt struggled. I've been high on him. He struggled in the spring game, but once again, they're going up against monsters at defensive end. So I have a level of uncertainty with the second tight end. And I have a level of uncertainty with Donovan Green coming back. The potential of the room is obviously there, but we got to see it. That's a wait and see one. I would jot that down as a moderate concern just because I don't know where Green is at. I don't know how quickly he's back into like Donovan Green form. It's been a year, man. It's been a year. So pretty shaky tight end, but I'm not, I don't feel the way I feel about the tight end room like I felt about the cornerbacks last spring or the way I felt about the offensive line last spring. There are guys there, but guys need to keep progressing. Platt and Orstrom. All right. Does that cover it for the offense? Oh, my favorite aspect of the offense, the running backs. I think A&M has an elite duo at running back, at least. Because I really don't know what Amari Daniels or E.J. Smith are going to bring us. Amari was banged up in the spring game. We didn't see too much E.J., although he had a couple of runs. Le'Veon Moss looks as strong as he's ever looked. He looks as healthy as he's ever looked. And Ruben Owens looks as lethal as he's ever looked in the open field. Of course, going up against patchwork defense, although I thought the defense played pretty well. These guys found space. Okay, so here's what I envision with this team. So a lot more power, a lot more of that outside double, triple pulling action with that pull and pin and pull. I think Ruben Owens is the change of pace guy. I think Le'Veon Moss is your down-to-down guy or workhorse kind of running back. I think Le'Veon Moss ran through Shamar Stewart arm tackles. He ran through DJ Hicks arm tackles. He pushed piles forward. He pushed guys forward. But he looked quicker than he's looked before because he's healthy right now. And we knew that that's what the best attribute of him was his ability just to move forward, fight for yardage, where Owens struggled to get those short yards to fight for like the 3, 4, 5 yard gains that are so important in a game. That's where Moss excelled. Moss did that, but he also looked quicker and more explosive this game because he was healthy. And that's with the patchwork O-line. So does that scare you with the run stopping on the defense? Maybe a little bit. Maybe. We'll talk about it. Heart and soul, down to down, Le'Veon Moss. And then Ruben Owens, you put him in like on the halfway through the second drive, something like that. And this guy is one cut away from breaking a big one. He's a one cut back. That's what he does. He's lethal in the open field. If he has an angle, he can accelerate. So when they do that pin and pull, when they pull the 3 guys or the 2 guys, whatever it might be, outside runs, this guy excels at just that one cut. So if you can get him running horizontally, and then once these blockers are getting home on the outside, Ruben Owens is one cut away from just breaking through that thing if the blocking is good and the timing is good, and he's giving his linemen time to get in position, but he's also at that appropriate pace where he's not behind the play. So that's a timing thing he'll have to figure out, and that's something he does need to figure out because we've noticed his decision making, his angles at the line of scrimmage last year were not super crisp. They looked better as the year went on. They looked better this spring game. They definitely looked better this spring game. But if he can figure that out as a change of pace back, this guy could be gashing huge plays after Moss wears defenses down. So I see a lethal 1-2 punch combo between those 2 guys. And that's not even really knowing where Amari Daniels is at his progression because he was banged up this game, as Elko told us. And knowing what E.J. Smith can be after he's been here for a while. So I have a lot of hope for that top 2 in that running back room next year, guys. And with the new scheme, with these new play designs, I think it could be a really fun year running the football. It could be really great. Okay, moving on to defense. I'll take a sip of the coffee. So let's transition running backs into run defense. So this is kind of overall linebacker and defensive line talk here. I'm just talking about run defense. It's my biggest concern going into next year. I think it could potentially be the weakness of the team. So bold statement. That's what I'm saying. I think run defense could be the weakness of this team next year. A couple of reasons. So just like bullshit little piece of evidence, the patchwork offensive lines kind of had their way with them at times in the spring game. So that's just one little piece. But really what it is I don't know who the starting nose is that we're really confident in. I think the best defensive tackle that played the most clean game was Rodas Johnson. I thought he was consistent. I thought he got a good push consistently. I thought he got a good pass rush from defensive tackle. I liked Rodas a lot. He's the transfer out of Wisconsin. He played a clean game. DJ Hicks, we know what potential he has. He had good moments, but he also had bad moments where he got washed out a lot of times. So I think he's the kind of guy that's going to have a very, very important summer in the weight room department, in the footwork department. We know he has potential. We know the staff believes in him. Where is he? Is he starter caliber SEC defensive tackle from week 1 next year going forward? I think there's a chance it is. There's a chance it is for sure. But there's also a chance he has to work through that, and he's not the player he could be until a few games in. And with the way the season is, that might be too late. But where the real concern is behind them, you have Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy, but he's nursing injuries, coming off of injuries. He always gets a good pop, a good push. And then what? Albert Regis, he's good, but he's also kind of limited. He's not the quickest guy. I think Albert Regis is going to be very reliable, maybe a starter caliber player, but you're talking about 3 guys there. 3 guys, and I think 2 of them, you don't really know their upside. All 3 of them, you don't really know what their upside is. So that's a little bit of a worry. Torrin York will help that a lot, but who's the other linebacker next to him? So I'm going to go on a crazy tangent here. Do you remember 2022? Edgerrin Cooper was like our main linebacker, and it was Chris Russell and a couple other guys, I forget who. Coop played pretty well, but he didn't take the leap until 2023 last season. We had constant fit issues with linebackers. Linebackers overly pursuing the wrong gap, in the wrong place at the wrong time, timing off. Bad linebacker fits in 2022 the whole year. It was a major issue. Last year, Torn York comes in. Very fundamentally sound player. Maybe not the biggest guy, maybe not the fastest guy, but fundamentally sound and obviously a leader. I think he helped Edgerrin Cooper take that leap. Now, I had been saying for a couple of years that I thought, and we all thought, Edgerrin Cooper had that leap in the chamber, but he hadn't had it yet. After a promising freshman year, we began to kind of wonder in 2022 if maybe he's just going to be a pretty good player, but not a great player. Torn York comes in, solid linebacker play next to him, made him a great player. Now you have Torn York kind of taking that mantle as the linebacker. Who's the guy that's going to be next to him? Is it going to be the kind of guy that opens up Torn York to be the guy that he can be? Or is it going to be a guy that is also inconsistent, a guy that's maybe not fitting right, and maybe a guy that kind of gets washed out easily, a guy that's not as decisive with his fits or jumping into the gaps? You can't have one bad linebacker and expect your run defense to be good. So in the spring game, Scooby Williams played a solid game. Damian Sanford had a solid game. And now we have the Pitt transfer. He's a very experienced guy. His name escapes me. He's new. I have to learn the name. He's in a factor in this equation too. But with uncertainty at linebacker and uncertainty at defensive tackle, that worries me. That worries me. So that is my number one, I think, concern about the team going into next year. And that is over O-line. And spoiler alert, that is over corner, I think. So run stopping is my biggest concern. Now, the crazy thing about this, it's not that crazy. This happens all the time. As bad as run stopping worries me, I am so confident in the pass rush. I feel like Shamar Stewart, Nick Scorton, Cassius Howell, and Shamar Turner could be the best pass rushing tandem we've had at A&M since Myles Garrett was here. Now, I have a bold statement to make. This is not even that bold. I think pass rushing from the defensive line alone, just rushing for, is going to be way better than it was last year. Because it wasn't very good last year. Fadil Diggs was our best pass rusher. Not really that great of a pass rusher. He was even more of a run block. He was even better run stopper. I think he was better in the run game even than as a pass rusher, even though he was kind of like a edge build with his body type and his skill set. So you didn't really have that guy. Well, now you have like four of these guys. I think Shamar Stewart is my absolute, I'll probably make a video about this later, but my absolute big breakout candidate for next season defensively, and maybe for the whole team if I had to rank the number one breakout candidate, Shamar Stewart. Last year, I thought he was close to being like a really damn good player, but he was always like a step behind, a step away from being that guy. Nick Scorton, do I have to say anything? I think his game spoke for himself. I think Big Ten sack leader speaks for itself. I think his body and his maturity speaks for itself. I think his poise in press conferences is really cool. Is that a factor? I don't know. I like it when players can talk and like have like a nice head about them. That's always cool to see. I think it makes for a more complete, I think it's a sign that's a more complete, a well-rounded dude. And then Cassius Howell, I think he has more deficiencies than either Shamar Stewart or Scorton, just mainly size. But I think the fact that you don't have to start him and the fact that he can be a third down package guy or a spell guy makes him just so lethal. It brings him up to that next level. And we saw good and bad from Cassius in the spring game, but he's a new player. He was like a 10-plus sack guy. I think as a guy off the bench, and then you throw in like a Malik Silla off the bench at defensive end, potentially an Eni White off the bench. He was hurt this spring, so we don't know where he's at. The packages you can put together on this pass rush on third downs, there's just so many things you can do. So I foresee a lethal pass rush situation. There's a lot of stand-up defensive ends. There's a lot of kind of 3-3 looks with like a stand-up outside linebacker or a edge rusher standing up. But we had Nick Scorton in a 2-point stance the whole time. Apparently he was in a No, he's in a 3-point stance the whole time, or most of the game, and apparently he comes from playing pretty much exclusively a 2-point stance from Purdue. That was an adjustment for him, but you could have fooled me. He looked damn good. I don't care. I just don't want to see that stand-up defensive end dropping 15 yards into coverage. I don't care if you move him around. I don't care if it looks like a 3-man front. I don't want this guy dropping 15 yards into coverage when that's not what he's accustomed to doing, like we did to LT Overton last year, like we did with Malik Silla last year. They say they're supposed to occupy a space, but really they were dropping 15 yards in coverage. I don't want to see that too much from our defensive ends. I think these guys have a chance to put up some crazy numbers this year. I'm really excited about that aspect. Yeah. So that kind of covers where I'm at with York and the linebackers and the defensive line. I think York is solid. York played a solid game. He did get pancaked pretty bad on a quarterback run, or was it a draw play? I think it was a quarterback draw. I don't know who pancaked him, but he got pancaked hard, but it was a tough play. He got squished. I'm not worried about York at all. Let's move on to a very interesting aspect of this team, the secondary. The safeties are awesome. You have so many options there. Elko has said it time and time again. Bryce Anderson has a chance to be like an All-American level player this year. The way he fits gaps, it's like confusing. You're like, was that a linebacker? No, that's Bryce Anderson hitting the gap so quickly that his timing is just like off the charts. He's just such a dart to the ball at the right time. Great in coverage. There was not too much going deep on him or Dalton Brooks. You have a lot of guys that can play there, but at the top, you're looking super solid. Corner. I don't think any one guy in particular stood out to me, but there was definitely a lid on the passing game. There was definitely a lid on it. I think there are so many options at corner. So I rewatched my video from last year, post-spring, and my biggest concern was just the lack of bodies at cornerback. That was like my biggest concern for coming out of the spring game. And I said we were like 1 or 2 injuries away from being very scared going against SEC caliber receivers. And guess what? It came true. You lose Tyreek Chappelle to injury. You lose Deuce Harmon to injury. You're down to true freshman or Josh DeBerry, who's not a corner, out there getting burned by Bama, getting burned by Ole Miss, getting burned by LSU, although I think LSU burns most solid corner rooms anyway, so I don't really blame them there. But corner alone, to me, was worth 2 losses last year. Bama and Ole Miss. You remember? I mean, yeah. Despite how bad the O-line was, how inconsistent the offense was, corner single-handedly lost us 2 games. And that was just due to lack of experienced guys, lack of just regular average dudes. We had below average dudes because they were either playing out of position or they had 0 experience. Now, I think Javen Thomas and Bravion Rogers are going to get better. These guys are good players. You're just asking them to do more than they're capable of at the time. Well, now you have a ton of guys. You have options, man. And you don't even have Des Ricks out there yet. So, Blanket Lee, BJ Mays, whoever it might be, I feel like you're going to get at least what you would call average play at corner next year. At least. And that's a floor. So, let's take last year, for example. Now, this is just like bullshit fan lingo here. But if you put an average corner room on the team last year, you may be a 9-win team. And that's with every other deficiency that we had. So it's a big deal. It's a big deal. And that is totally on Elko and the staff for building this roster, grabbing the portal guys, putting this thing together, and putting together a spring game. Did I cover everything I wanted to cover? Let me check my notes. I'm probably going to have to make a cut here. I tried to go this whole video without cutting, but now I have to check my notes, and I don't think I can ramble long enough to get through this aspect of the episode. Maybe I can. All right, let's see here. Oh, Cyrus Allen returned punts. Moose Muhammad returned punts. That's a question now. So, yeah. Let's see here. Stewart getting destroyed by Zune. Yeah, that happens. Scorton just too fast for a puller. Yep. Scorton is just a beast. He might be one of the best DNs in the country. I'm not even lying. O-line struggle with some twists on pass pro. I've heard this story before. Please fix. But that's something you really need to build like cohesion with and like communication between your main guys. So hopefully that comes in fall camp. Power running. Yeah, a lot of center pulls, which is cool. No, yeah, I think that's going to be it. I think that's it. I think I said everything I want to say. Just a couple of notes. If y'all haven't heard, Bobby Taylor I think he's stepping away from football. That's the word. He's no longer on the roster. I think we would all be thrilled if he was picked up by the team in some staff capacity, grad assistant, grad recruiting analyst, whatever position you can fill for him. I think we all love Bobby. If he's up for it and he's willing to learn and pick that up as a career, yes, we all support that. Bryce Foster, I don't want to speak too much on it. We've talked about it enough. I don't want to dog on this guy. It wasn't in the cards, guys. It just didn't work out. He's no longer with the team. He's still with the track team, I believe, so he has that going. It's over. Mark Naboo, TJ Shanahan. Let's see what happens. Besides that, guys, let's take a look at this second half of the portal window. I think we have till the end of the month for this spring portal window. In the running for a couple of nice receivers. Oh, I guess I should make this note about the receiver room. I really like our guys, but we need more guys. We need more players at receiver. Right now you're in the running for two really good guys, or two serviceable dudes. I don't know if they're really good. They could be unknown, relative level of unknown with both of these guys. I think it's Smith out of Houston and the guy out of Penn State. Names escape me. I'm sorry. But the Penn State guy visited A&M during the spring weekend. He's down to A&M and Auburn to choose from. Auburn is recruiting like a monster right now. Hugh Freeze has that thing going. And then A&M just got announced by On3. They have the visit with the guy, the receiver out of Houston, who's like an 800-yard receiver out of Houston. The Penn State guy was like a 700-yard lead receiver on the team, but not a good passing team with a very mediocre quarterback in Drew Allar last year. But I need both of those. I would like the team to get both of those guys with Jabari Barber going down. And then we'll have to see where they put Terry Bussey. We don't even have Bussey here yet, or Dalen Evans. We got some reinforcements coming in this summer. In addition to whatever you do in the portal, I think you're still slightly above the scholarship limit, so we'll have to see what else happens, guys. But that's going to be it for this show. I have no idea how long we went. I will see you guys Thursday night, 8 p.m. for the live show. It will be going on during the draft. I'm not a big draft guy, but we'll keep an eye on it. I know you guys will be watching the draft. I'm not a big draft guy, but we'll keep an eye on it, see which Aggies go, see if any Aggies go round one. I don't know if that's going to happen, but we'll have that in the corner, and we'll talk about the spring game. I'll open it up for phone calls if anybody wants to call in. That's Thursday night, 8 p.m. Central. Until then, guys, if you could like and subscribe, that would help me greatly. Appreciate you all. Thanks. Gig 'em. Beat the hell out of the true off season now. Now we're getting into the doldrums. We're going to have to get creative on this channel. I think I got some NCAA football stuff coming out soon. So I'll see you then too. Bye.